don't mindset.
It's the month of May. It's the time for iRacing to make its pilgrimage to Speedway, Indiana. Today, though, we challenge ourselves on the road course at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It's time for round 9 of 2022 Season 2 in the iRacing IndyCar Open Series. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to RaceSpotTV, where alongside myself, Arjuna Kankipati, delighted to be joined by Andrew Kinsella. Andrew, of course, we're racing here for the Grand Prix, but it's exciting. It's the month of May, and this weekend is the iRacing Fix 500. It's the time when we all start to get excited. It's the time when the community starts to get a little bit antsy as well.
Absolutely, Arjuna. There's a palpable buzz in the air here today, just because this does signal the beginning of the month of May, our first foray at Indianapolis. And of course, it is just like in real life on the road course here. Our version of the road course here, a little bit different than what they do in the real world, of course. We don't have the quick chicane coming on to the back straightaway there. We don't have the loop at the end of the lap there towards turn 1. We do, of course, have an additional loop in the infield instead of that chicane, so a little bit different configuration here today, but again, all of the excitement is building here, and today is just the first step in the month of May.
It's a configuration that IndyCar didn't actually race at, but we'll see how it goes here today. Hopefully, a new version of IMS coming soon to an iRacing service near you. 4 weeks left to go in our championship, and this is when those drop weeks will start to be factored in. 12 weeks, your best 8 rounds get counted to the championship scores. Indianapolis GP, Las Vegas, Indianapolis for the Oval after the iRacing Indy 500, and leading to our title showdown, hopefully, on the streets of Belle Isle. It's a very exciting time of the year, of course. Looking forward to Belle Isle. We get 2 street course races this season. We are spoiled. Long Beach and Detroit. Very, very different, but both very, very fun. Let's have a quick look then at the championship points. Just before we start to factor in the drop points, Brandon Traynor almost 200 points clear at the front. He is looking comfortable on course to winning another championship to back up the one that he won in 2021. Adam Crane second, Blocker down in third, who of course will be trackside here in Speedway, Indiana for the upcoming Indianapolis 500. Alexis Newsom in 4th in her first full season with Team i5G, while David Porcelli, after making the switch to the VRS satellite racing program, sits inside of the top 5. It's close behind them though. It's Will Lyon through Rashad Craig, 6th through 10th, split by just 31 points. That's nice and tight. Of course, things might change around once those drop weeks get factored in.
Yeah, absolutely. Those drop weeks will really start to matter here, and you can see that there's definitely a group 2 through 5, and then again, as you mentioned, 6 through 10, that I think we're going to see a lot of movement in the coming weeks. These results will definitely matter, and it's going to be difficult for some of these drivers to, I think, balance their desire to get as high in the Season 2 standings as possible with their hopes and dreams for the iRacing Indy 500 that is coming up in just a few weeks here. So it'll be interesting to see what sacrifices are made, what decisions are made from these drivers, and which races they really target to try and build their way up through these standings.
So let's take a look at the track. Let's talk to you about the track conditions. With about 3 minutes left in qualifying, I do expect with a slightly smaller field at that time will get cut short. Andrew talked as well about drivers focusing on the iRacing Indianapolis 500. We have no representatives of Powerslide Motorsports today. We've got a couple of drivers from the private label Team Hype. A slightly smaller strength of field, but one that should produce some exciting racing for sure. It's warm though on the track and plenty of gusts of wind. When you talk about this configuration, you talk about the balance between mechanical grip and top speed and trimming out the car, Andrew. What's that wind going to mean for our drivers here today?
Yeah, the wind just adds another layer to this cake here, Arjuna. It really does make it tricky, especially depending on the direction that wind is blowing. It can really throw the cars around, particularly in that infield section. That inner loop of the track really is sensitive, and you have to nail it lap after lap to go fast here. So that's one of the sections that I'll be looking at with the wind as high as it is.
So let's run you through how qualifying's sitting right now. We're just under 2 minutes left on the clock. It's Connor Harrington that's got pole by just under a tenth of a second. Yes, there you go. Brandon Traynor, then a further tenth and a bit back in 3rd. Crane sits temporarily in 4th. Not expecting too many changes, though. Only David Porcelli has just finished up a lap. Pablo Rangel will be the only driver not to put a lap time on the board. Bit of a variance through the field. About 3 seconds splitting Harrington back to Nikita Lastochkin, the Russian driver who's got some real-world experience on the road to Indy as well. I saw in our YouTube chat that Sean Ryan has jumped in and said he's slow. Unfortunately, yes, he is 2.3 seconds, but he's got an opportunity to mix it up with the best in the community, and that's what we like about these sort of races, Andrew. Anyone can join, anyone can pit themselves up against those around them and see where their pace fares out.
Yeah, absolutely. And getting into one of these top split events, especially for a driver who may not necessarily be there race after race, it's definitely not only a fun experience, but it's an eye-opening experience to really see just how good these drivers at the top of this field are, and look at just how close the top 3 are even, Arjuna. It's covered by less than a tenth of a second between Harrington and Traynor. Should
be a fun race. The push-to-pass will come in handy with the track temperatures. Maybe we'll have seen some drivers change up the balance of their cars and take some downforce out, add some in. It will all depend on where they feel that they're going to go. Of course, we also talk about requiring both compounds of tires. The softer alternate compound tire, the red-walled tire, will last a little bit shorter but grips up early and wears out a little bit quicker. The black mark primary tires, though, with these track temperatures, with some of the higher speed corners, might very well be a viable option through the course of the race. Qualifying comes to a close. Let's go trackside for the first time in the month of May here in Speedway, Indiana. Let's run you down through the starting grid for round 9 of the iRacing IndyCar Open Championship. Connor Harrington puts it on pole with a 1:11.193. It's a private label Team Hype lockout of the front row. Phil Krause will line up on his outside. Brandon Traynor has talked about not having much practice, but he lines up inside of Adam Crane with Rashad Craig and John Bodefor behind. Bodefor, of course, looking to keep up his momentum that saw him win a race at the Nordschleife just a couple of weeks ago. Danilo Piazza in 7th with David Porcelli alongside. Kevin Burrell and Alexander Russell share row 5. Russell lining up behind his teammate in the VRS satellite racing machine. David Graybill for the Scorers team inside of Makoto Yamasaki on row number 6, while rolling from 13 sees Richard Holt, Clint Martin alongside him. Davis Trask and Robin Glennox 15th and 16th, while Sean Ryan and Nikita Lastochkin, the final cars to put in lap times. Pablo Rangel will line up last in the 19-car field that we've got here today. It's going to be a full pace lap for these drivers, plenty of opportunities for them to get some heat into their tires to build up for the race as well, and be very interesting to see the tire compound choices to get this race underway. Still waiting for many of the cars to roll to the starting grid, but it's about 50-50 so far for those who are lined up.
And I do think that these drivers are waiting until the very last second to keep that tire compound change a secret, I think, from their competitors. And as you mentioned, right now we're seeing about an even split, a little bit, I think, favored to those black tires, which is a bold call here because while we are expecting the blacks to probably last a little bit longer here, Arjuna, I think the story is that the reds will really be strong on these opening few laps, and this isn't necessarily the easiest place to pass at, so having that tire advantage for those first few laps could be very, very important for some of these drivers here.
It's interesting, the top 5 have all lined up on the black mark primary tires. It's behind them, John Bodeford, David Porcelli, 2 cars to lined up on the red mark tire. We'll really see how the black mark tire will fire off in the early portions of the race. Pace car pulls away, we've got a long lap to go. Looks like 2 cars starting from pit road. David Graybill and Pablo Rangel electing not to take to the start because I'm not entirely surprised to see that, Andrew. It is a difficult run down into turn number 1. You're hard on the anchors with the cold tires. We've seen plenty of chaos in the real world there.
Absolutely, and the other thing with turn 1 here is it is definitely a huge funnel effect. We have such a wide entrance into turn 1 because you do have not only the speedway, the super speedway front straightaway, but you also, that's exactly where the super speedway entrance to pit road is. So it's a very wide entry, and it funnels down and into a fairly tight chicane there that really has produced, not only in the virtual world, but in the real world as well, a significant amount of carnage.
Rolling through the switchback hairpins. I don't know about you, Andrew. I do not like this configuration of the Indianapolis Grand Prix circuit. It's a little bit better than the version that had those, as someone called, the Mickey Mouse hairpins at the end of that back straightaway, but it just doesn't flow very well, in my opinion.
No, it's one of those sections that it's really challenging as a driver because you do have to just nail it perfectly in order to have any shot down this back straightaway. I definitely prefer the modern version of this track where we have that quick left-right chicane where you saw so much calamity happening, not only in the IndyCar race, but especially in the NASCAR race that was held here last year. So to me, that is definitely the optimal configuration, and hopefully iRacing will scan that configuration and get it in the sim soon.
Of course, they talked about last year on social media, the Doug Bowles, president of IMS, that a trip to the Speedway was planned by iRacing, but of course the COVID-19 pandemic scuppered many plans, including for that trip to get underway. The pace car will pull off. Field will be in control of Connor Harrington as we roll our way the wrong way through turn 1. They're backing themselves up really early. You'd expect Connor Harrington to try and wait as late as possible, if we're being honest, to get that power down, roll into turn 1, because there's going to be a big old tow as they get onto the anchors and the run down into turn number 1. It's round 9 of 12. We're in that final stretch. 4 races left to go. It's the month of May. Where better to be than Speedway Indiana? We're ready to go at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Connor Harrington picks up the throttle, green flag flies, we're racing for round 9, and Brandon Traynor straight away looks to make it 3 wide on the push to pass, so is Philip Krause. Connor Harrington gets swarmed and is going to have to try and defend down to the inside. That's not where you want to be. Phil Krause takes the lead, Traynor up to 2nd, Crane boxes Harrington down to 4th. That is a very difficult start for the pole sitter. Bodeford on those red marked tires, trying to make hay while the sun still shines.
Harrington fighting back on Adam Crane, and Bodeford is really looking strong here. He's all the way up into 3rd place, challenging Connor Harrington through this inner loop section, these switchbacks here. And it looks like Bodeford is going to get around Connor Harrington. I'm not sure what happened to Harrington on the start. It almost looked like he missed a shift there, Arjuna, because he did seem to get a jump initially, but Brandon Traynor through the middle there, really brave on the brakes, and he did a fantastic job. Phil Krause in the lead, though, keeping up the private label team hype train at the front there.
Well, I did say a push to pass for Krause and Traynor. I think Harrington maybe didn't expect them to be so aggressive with those 10 usages of the 60 to 70 horsepower spurts that you get here. and well, you really saw the benefit of that. We'll see the downforce trim that these drivers are running as well. David Graybill is had an issue after having to start on pit lane after missing the gridding phase of the race. Kraus leads lap 1, Trainer behind. The two VRS satellite racing machines filing themselves into turn 1 as David Porcelli looks to the inside of his teammate Adam Crane. Will back out of that one. Crane looked at one point like he might even have worked his way up into third, but had to back out of that one. A 3-wide situation, always very, very tricky. The third of the VRS satellite racing machines, Alexander Russell, up to 9th in front of Kevin Birrell.
And I will say these drivers did do a really good job of keeping it nice and clean. Apart from that spin from David Graybill, we had very few issues on that first lap, so good job from all of these drivers here. But the VRS satellite racing team, I've definitely got my eye on them here today, Arjuna, because not only have they looked strong, but I would say that Adam Crane is probably the only person who stands any sort of shot at getting any challenge going on Brandon Traino. And the reason for that is Crane has been very, very consistent this year, so it's allowed him to have some drop weeks in the bank, and that potentially he, through his consistency, can sort of contend with that outright speed that Traino has shown so often.
Beautiful closing up behind on those red mark tires in the Alpine Stars geodesic racing machine. Adam Crane on the button to close the gap to Harrington that's already built up to 1.1 seconds. Traino feels the pressure. Beautiful pops himself out. Don't think it'll be wise if you're a Traino to fight this one too hard. But Beaudefort doesn't commit under the brakes. Traino holds on to second for now. Harrington is closed up as a result of that. Not being dropped off is Connor Harrington. He's pulling in Adam Crane as well, but Phil Kraus enjoys a 1.2 seconds advantage, almost out of drafting range.
One of the most underrated parts of Brandon Traino's driving, and really his sort of renaissance that has happened on these road courses, Arjuna, is that he's gotten so much stronger on the brakes. And I think we just saw that into turn 1 there, is he's so much more confident with the car, under braking. He feels secure. He's able to go deeper than he ever has before. And I think that's really one of the things that's allowed him to improve as much as we've seen on these road courses here.
Filing their way towards the back straightaway as they continue to build up the pressures in their tires, Let's grab a look at something that happened on the start a little bit further back. It's Clinton Martin, who was side-by-side on the run down into those hairpins, just gets pushed wide by a car on those red marked tires. Now, I would believe that's Richard Holt. Does a good job to make sure he doesn't come back onto the racetrack and, well, in Connery Maddox's words, unsafely rejoin, because he would have felt that from a mile away. Beaudefort now the one feeling the pressure. I wonder if he just got a poor exit coming back onto the banking. Harrington has a lunge down to the inside. Those red tires will grip on the inside of turn 2, and Beaudefort holds on for now, all the while getting closed in by Adam Crane.
You can tell, though, Arjuna, those black tires are really starting to fire off now, and the red tires are starting to feel the pain just a little bit. But the nice thing about this season is, as we see Beaudefort getting very wide there through that loop section there, able to hold off Harrington forward now, but it looks like Harrington is putting Beaudefort under a lot of pressure. But just finishing my thought, one of the nice things about this season, Arjuna, is we finally have that compound swap mandating, so all drivers will have to use both compounds of tires, and that's really sort of leveled the playing field and introduced some strategies like Beaudefort's taken advantage of so far.
See that on the left side, the compounds that these drivers have elected to start the race on. Let's get a look at what happened then to David Graybill, and it's after the 90 left that leads into the 90 right. Set yourself up on the left side of the track. He takes a lot of curb, unsettles the car, and then on that power down application, loops it by himself. And the good thing is, after starting on pit lane, wouldn't have cost him too much time. Here comes Harrington once more, not availing himself of the push to pass, but he'll slide on through. Beaudefort unable to fight that one back, and Harrington slides his way forward to third. Kraus 1.7 seconds clear of Traino.
Yeah, one of the things about this configuration of the track is you have such a long run from the 90-degree corner we just saw that Graybill spun out of, all the way down into turn 1, so you don't honestly need to use up the push to pass on every section, particularly if you have a little bit of a downforce advantage, which I think that Connor Harrington probably is running a little bit more trim than John Beaudefort is, so he was able to make that pass happen without any push to pass whatsoever. But Beaudefort, as you can see, very, very strong in this infield section compared to Harrington, so Harrington is not out of the woods yet by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, and you don't really want to be on the outside of that corner, we'll put it that way. Beaudefort has a look to the inside, but that's all just about setting yourself up the way that you want to. Now we'll get that look as Harrington, Traino, Crane all on the push to pass, this time by Beaudefort still on 10 so far. He's rationing them out and maybe waiting for the opportunity to burn them later in this race. It's a 40-lap race. It's a decently sized pit window. We'll see when these drivers have elected to call themselves down onto pit lane. Nikita Lastochkin on the button, as well as Glenix and Martin further down the field. All 19 drivers on the left side of your screen. If you want to exactly pick apart some of the data, use Timing 71. Go to RaceSpot.wtf/Indy. It's a train that's formed behind Connor Harrington, John Beaudefort and company. It's from 3rd all the way back to 7th or so positions. Danilo Piazza not out of the mix as well. He's only 1 second back from Rashad Craig, so technically still within the drafting range.
Yeah, definitely still within the train of cars here, but it gets increasingly difficult as these tires wear off, Arjuna, to really stay in that train. So you look at the likes of Rashad Craig and especially Danilo Piazza, it really will pay for them to try and stay in this train as best they can, but it gets increasingly more difficult the further back in a line that you are and the longer into a stint you go, because those tires just don't allow you the grip to survive in the train through that infield section.
Philip Kraus on the button this time by, so maybe he's picking up the tempo as he tries to give himself a bit of a buffer into the pit stop cycles. You can also see left side, Harrington down 2 by virtue of being swarmed on the start with the cars around him using that burst of horsepower down into turn number 1. Porcelli's up 2, Craig down 2. Nikita Lastochkin, the biggest mover, he's up to 13, 5 positions up from where he qualified. Second slowest time from the Russian in the qualifying session. We've seen Nikita plenty on RaceSpotTV in recent memory. Tuesday night, the Real Racers Virtual Club takes to the track again, and probably see him tomorrow battling out with the likes of Anders Krohn, maybe Rob McGuinness, plenty of drivers that have competed in American open wheel racing over the years. Crane has started to drop back as well as Porcelli. It's about a second that splits the two of them. Porcelli's one of those cars on those red mark alternate tires, and I do think he's holding on to them quite decently. I think Beaudefort as well, after getting passed by Harrington, is now just settled into the rhythm. He's the closest out of anyone in this train behind, other than Rashad Craig.
Yeah, I'm surprised that the Reds are holding on as well as they are right now, in fact, because, I mean, you can see that Craig is all over the back of Porcelli, but Porcelli's really holding his own on those tires, as you mentioned, so it's definitely not as big a gap as we've seen at some of the tracks where you sort of go over a cliff with the red tires, but I do think that you just see that little bit of a disadvantage in terms of the length of time that you can keep them working. As we see Rashad Craig making an outside attempt, Porcelli is defending onto the inside. It looks like he might just be able to hold off Rashad Craig here. It's
such a long straight that push to pass really almost expires by the time you get into the braking zone. It was a little bit loose from Porcelli, but he held onto the car. Craig unable to get through. Good fighting, costing them time. 1.5 now, the gap up to Adam Crane, who's fallen a further 1.5 behind Beaudefort. Connor Harrington actually closing on Brandon Traino. Last time by was about 2.5 tenths quicker than the number 6 machine, the king of the bricks here, of course, going the other way around when we take the oval. In just a week or two's time for the iRacing Indy 500. That gap between Traino and Kraus has opened up to about, 2 and a bit seconds. Kraus looking very, very comfortable. Of course, it's going to switch around on the tires. We'll see how each of these machines handles on the different compounds of tires. Oh, Pablo Rangel and David Grable getting mixed up with one another through the 2 hairpins. I think Grable's car might now be beached.
Yeah, there's a lip there in that loop section there, and it just it can catch you out if you don't power through the berm there, and I think that's what happened to David Grable. But Grable has had a little bit of an adventurous day today so far, Arjuna. This is definitely not the first time we've seen him pointing not the right way compared to the track, but I think it's definitely worth talking about just how strong the private label team hype drivers are going, as Rashad Craig and David Porcelli are really battling it out as well.
Danilo Piazza has closed up as well. Those red tires on Porcelli's machine starting to feel the pressure. Let's grab a look at what happened to Pablo Rangel, to David Grable, and, well, it's a bit of an optimistic lunge, and it's unfortunately Grable that comes off worse. Now just watch here, this is what we were talking about with that lip. He tries to rejoin the track, he's able to spin it up, and then there you go, tires spinning, no traction.
Yeah, that was an optimistic lunge, to say the least, from David Grable. The door was never truly open there. It may have seemed like it from in the car, but the door was always going to close shut there. But this is, I think, the best battle on the track right now. Rashad Craig is hounding the back of David Porcelli. I think one thing I will say with Craig is I think he's using his push to pass a little bit too early in the straightaway, if I'm honest, because he's not been able to really take advantage of the full thing. But that being said, he does get around him this time, but it's allowing Porcelli to maybe fight back here under the brakes here.
I just wonder if it's also the configuration of aero that Craig has got. Maybe he's whacked a little bit more onto that car, looking very good in the infield. Porcelli maybe just trimmed out just that little bit more. Carrington closing on Traino, Beaudefort being reeled in by Crane. There's plenty of fighting going on as we approach the quarter-way mark of this race here. With about 37 odd minutes left to go, at least estimated. It should be noted, I see a good point in our YouTube chat, that it wouldn't be the worst idea in the world to be doing a bit of fuel saving to try and shorten the stint at the end of the race on the alternate tire if you are one of the many cars that started on the primaries.
Yeah, I know fuel saving gets a bad rap in many corners, but just like in real life, it always pays to have that little bit of extra fuel, those extra time on the best tires. It's really important in these cars to manage your fuel and your equipment that way. But right now, it's Connor Harrington who's looking really strong. It looks like he just might have a shot here at Brandon Traino. They're side by side here in turn 1, Arjuna.
Quick through the final corner. Traino has a lunge, but Harrington covers him off. Harrington quick in quali, works his way back to second, but now 3.5 back from Philip Kraus. He's got a lot of work to do if he wants to try and fight for the race win. As behind them, Adam Crane slips up very slightly and then gathers it back up in time to close his way forward on John Beaudefort, who's now 2.5 seconds back from Brandon Traino, who's of course now in third spot. If you're Beaudefort, do you come in a little bit earlier? It's, we talk about the alternate tires lasting shorter and maybe, those tires, the car starting on the primaries going long in stint 1. Do you do the opposite if you're starting on the alternate?
Yeah, I think you have to, Arjuna. I think you definitely have to get off those alternate tires as quickly as you possibly can and find a way to make up some time on those black tires, especially because it didn't seem like it really took very long at all for the black tires to really fire off here. At some of the tracks, it can take 2 or 3 laps. I would say it's a lap and a half here. So if I'm Beaudefort, I'm looking to get into the pits as quickly as I can, get off those red tires and get onto the blacks and see what I can do there. But one thing I also wanted to draw your attention to, just going back to the Connor Harrington move, he did not use push to pass once again to make a pass. So that tells me that the private label team hype cars are really trimmed out here, because that's the second time that we've seen Harrington just be able to power along alongside someone on speed alone on this front straightaway.
You can see on the left side of the screen who's using the push to pass and how frequently they're doing that. Adam Crane of the top 10, the most frequent application so far is Davis Trask holds off, and Nikita Lestochkin back in 13th position. As Lestochkin got a healthy dose of curb there. He's worked his way through turn 2. Will come under fire from Unglenix. Big lock up there from Trask. Here comes the Michigan native and Rob Unglenix. Those red tires on Lestochkin's car really giving up the ghost now. He's having to defend hard.
Absolutely he is, but the one thing that it did do for Lestochkin is it did get him further up this field, because he definitely did not have a happy qualifying effort there. So they did the job for Lestochkin. It's whether or not he can hold on for these next few laps until he's able to get into the pits, and whether he's able to hold off the likes of Unglenix behind him.
Plenty of cars using that push to pass. You can see it light up on the left-hand side of your screen. Piazza trying to use it to close on David Porcelli as well as we ride on board with Unglenix. Here's that look though, as Piazza in front actually managed to get past Porcelli, so his slide continues backwards. Looks like David Grable rolling down pit lane, try to get back onto track. I wonder if that car might have terminal damage. Crane looking forward as well as he closes on Beaudefort as they work their way through the middle portion of the lap.
Yeah, and again, this is another case where the black tires are just really starting to come into their own here for Adam Crane. And I think you're going to see John Beaudefort. He's going to be under increasing attack right here. And this is really the disadvantage of the red mark tires, is getting off of the corners gets increasingly difficult. So it opens up some passing opportunities that we didn't normally get, such as into this section here, especially at the end of the back straightaway. It becomes a passing opportunity where earlier on it wouldn't have been, and if we didn't have the tire difference here, it probably wouldn't be either.
It is a hornet's nest for 13th on back. Lastotchin back in front of Trask, who's fallen behind even Robin, Glennox, Martins, and Ryan squabbling for 16th and 17th. Even if they're off the pace of the leaders, still having a ding-dong fight, as there goes Adam Crane having that look around and powers his way through Bodefor's car. A sitting duck on the run down into turn number 1.
And Crane was on the push to pass there, so that definitely helped him get around, and I expect Crane to probably set sail just a little bit here. Try and do whatever he can to close back up on the back of Brandon Trainer in front of him, but as he said, this ding-dong fight is going to go for a few more rounds, I think, because Davis Trask has gotten back around Robin Glennox, and they are just going at each other back and forth here, so this is some really exciting action back in the field. David
Trask already halfway through his allotment of the push to passes. He gets a little bit loose and squirrely on those red alternate tires. Stochkin trying to run away, cars locking up the inside front as they work their way through the corner. 4 seconds the gap between Phil Krause and Connor Harrington at the front. Harrington starting to drop Brandon Trainer. That gap now almost up to a full second as they work their way through into the pit stop cycle of this race. It's a short track, and Robin Glennox gets a... I wonder what happened there. Did he get a slowdown penalty, or did he just get super loose?
No, he got loose under power there, Arjuna, and he hooked the curb coming out of the corner there, and it basically shot him straight towards the wall. It was a very good job from Rob to actually recollect the car there and gather it back up, and he only lost one position there to Clint Martin. So it was definitely some heads-up driving, but it's cost all three of these some time back, and Davis Trask has gotten a little bit further ahead. And the good news for Nikita Lastoshkin is with Trask also on the red tires, it's been holding up the three primary behind him. So that's really good for Lastochkin's strategy right now.
Makoto Yamasaki gets past Richard Holt. Another one of those cars starting to feel the pain, as it were, on those tires. Let's grab a look at then what happened with Robin Glennox. So nice and okay through the entry, and ooh, he gets close to running into the back of David Trask, and he's sent out wide. Will now compromise his line as he cuts back in, and just look at him here. On the power, onto the back straightaway. Gets loose. Ooh, that's a good save. It could have been a lot worse.
Absolutely. Really fast hands. You got to be fast on not only with your hands, but with your feet as well. And so good job saving it back up. But again, it's just cost him that little bit of time, but it could have been a lot worse.
15 laps into the race. We'll talk as well about what's just happened this past weekend. My voice is a little bit tired. I am tired as well. We've just wrapped up VCO Infinity. 24 races within a 24-hour period. What a event it was. All the drivers absolutely loving it and asking if we can do it again before the year is out. It means that you don't need safety cars to bring people back together. If you have an issue, well, 45 minutes later, you're doing another race. It's as simple as that. 5 different cars, the IndyCar being one of them. It kicked us off at Road America. And the thing that I noticed, yes, I know it was a fixed setup that, you know, the likes of Josh Chin and Adam Blocker might not have loved, but none of them qualified, or neither of them, I should say, qualified within the top 10 in the IndyCar races that we had. It was great to see the best of the sim racing world out in the IndyCar, and from what I can tell, talking to some of them, really enjoying it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those cars, I feel, Arjuna, that we just need more people trying, because when you try it, you fall in love with it. But the whole event, as you say, it was just an incredible event to watch, and I'm sure an incredible event to participate in, because you get so many opportunities as we see Davis Trask. He's really suffering on those old tires, and I think he's going to lose his spot to Sean Ryan's here.
Oh, well, that is aggressive to cover off the move, and Glennox has been bottled down after his very similar incident there, or issue I should say, is now Rashad Craig gets up in front of John Bodefor. That was nice and easy, assisted by the push to pass. Craig, another one of those drivers who's really starting to avail himself of that push to pass a bit more frequently than maybe you'd expect. Again, left side of the screen, you can see those numbers. Adam Crane has used 6 of his so far, just left with 4 before even getting to the halfway point. Bodefor has been banking them. I wonder if he's expecting to be able to charge maybe back up to 4th when he switches over and expects those others to start to suffer.
Yeah, this is really good strategy from Bodefor. There's no use using up your push to passes now when you don't have the tires to really take the fight to them. But on the next stint, John Bodefor will have the right tire compound to really take it to the likes of Rashad Craig and Adam Crane. So having those push-to-passes banked, very, very important for him, and there'll be less opportunities for Crane and Craig to defend.
These guys still going at it so much that Martin and Lastochkin running away just in front of them. It's now Ryan that leads the group with Trask in behind him and Glenix at the tail end of the group. We started with 19, only David Graybill has retired. Pablo Rangel still out there on track, albeit almost 70 seconds back from your leader. Might actually be some lap traffic for the likes of Phil Krause to navigate through in the next couple of moments' time. This weekend, the iRacing fixed 500. Well, I've heard some, less than savory comment about the setup, but that's what fixed setup racing is all about, Andrew, adapting to what's thrown at you. You might not like it, the others won't like it as well, likely.
Yeah, so I actually don't mind the fact that the setup is, like, objectively not necessarily the best to drive, because what it does is it forces people to really have to drive the car. Sometimes a good fixed setup race doesn't necessarily come from having a good setup, just because when you have a good setup, it's, especially on an oval like Indy, a good fixed setup here would lead to a lot of pack racing, a lot of carnage, whereas when you really have to drive the car, when you really have to preserve the tires and you really have to think about what you're doing for 500 laps, that can really shake things up and force the cream to basically rise to the top and find inventive ways to make sure that you're keeping the tires under you the whole stint.
Bodefor down to pit lane, so his tires have well and truly worn through, and he's finally decided it's time to come down to pit lane just before the halfway marker. Following him in is David Porcelli, so it's that window for those alternate tires to be taken off, the primaries to be thrown on. See how they go from here. Nikita Lastochkin, I don't think coming down to pit lane, you'd expect him to be on the access road if he was. He's coming under fire from Clint Martin just behind those two, very, very close down through the middle part of the lap. Clint Martin having a little bit of a technical issue there. He works his way down to the inside. Lastochkin wants to go deep. Doesn't fight it too hard. Martin up now to what is technically 11th position.
Yeah, and I'm, to be honest, a little bit surprised that Lastochkin didn't come in that lap because, as was mentioned in the YouTube chat, the black tires can last 23, 24, even 25 or 26 laps if you're fuel saving. So it's well within the window for these red marked runners to get off these red tires and really take advantage of the blacks. But that being said, the longer you go on this stint, the less fuel you have to take. So there is a little bit of a benefit to going as long as you can. But that being said, the red tires, as you can see, they're really starting to suffer on this track, and Lastochkin is just a sitting duck for all these black primary drivers here.
Ryan and Glenix now behind. Trask has fallen off by virtue of a mistake. About 43 seconds is the trip down pit road. Does Lastochkin commit this time by? Looks like he's keeping low, and there he goes. How aggressive he is on the entry as well, just trying to sweep the momentum through. It's a tricky pit entry. You need to make sure you hit your marks. And Lastochkin, a bit of a wiggle on the brakes. I think he managed to slow it down in time.
Yeah, and that's really key there. What you saw from Lastochkin is you do have to push this pit entry really, really hard. It's very difficult to actually go through that pit entry essentially backwards from how it was designed to be run. And it's a little bit disorientating, especially when you're so used to going through it the right way, so to speak, and then jumping on the brakes while you're turning. It's a difficult pit entry, and you can really gain a lot of time if you maximize it.
On board with Brandon Traino as he works his way in the draft of Connor Harrington. Has not been dropped as much as one might expect. And now, of course, we will see that the cars roll out to Indianapolis this coming weekend for I believe it's the GMR Grand Prix of Indianapolis. The week after, of course, go fast time. It's qualifying. We do have 33 cars for the Indianapolis 500. Won't be any bumping, but you don't want to start at the back. That is for sure. And the week after that, of course, the 106th running of the great race, and it's back to back to back for these teams, for these drivers, for the engineers as well. We go to the streets of Belle Isle. The week after that, we go for the Chevrolet Detroit Grand Prix.
And of course, this will be the last time that we go to Belle Isle in this car, at least for the time being. This will be the last time on that circuit, and it goes into downtown Detroit starting in 2023. But You brought up a point with Brandon Traino, and I think what this does illustrate, Arjuna, is that the private label team hype drivers, they really are on that lower downforce setup, and it's allowing the higher downforce setup of Brandon Traino as we see him coming onto pit road. Look at him lock up the brakes there. That was nearly disaster for Brandon Traino, but it allowed Brandon Traino to keep the tires under him just that little bit longer, and it gave him the advantage as the tires started to wear out, and that's going to be even more important come this stint here, because Bill Kraus, Connor Harrington, and Brandon Traino all have to go onto the red tires here. So the fact that Traino is easier on his tires is going to be very, very important this last stint.
Phil Kraus is showing that they're... Oh, it's Brandon Traino's blown past his box. Well, there goes any chance that he'll get out in front of Connor Harrington. It doesn't matter now what he does firing up those tires, but there's not much fall off from what we're seeing. Phil Kraus punching in his fastest lap of the race last time by 1:13.126. For Brandon Traino, it was a 45 basically second trip down pit lane. He lost probably a good 2-3 seconds as he tried to get himself slowed down. The undercut's not going to work. It doesn't matter about firing up those reds now, but we will see if he can make it a little bit closer up to Connor Harrington at the end of the pit stop cycle. Phil Kraus coming in. You'll notice there's a big bump. It caught out Traino, it caught out Crane, it's caught out Kraus as well, and you could see Harrington's car just rolling over that. It really goes for a bit of a ride.
Yeah, all three of those drivers were pushing it to the absolute maximum on pit entry there. It's unfortunate that Brandon Traino did overshoot his box, because I think it's going to prevent him from doing this undercut here on these two drivers. But important to mention with the Kraus and Harrington fast laps that they have been really burning through the push to passes, trying to maximize these last few laps on those black bark tires. But I expect oh, look at Harrington lock up into the box there. I do expect that the times will start to fall even lower as they get out on these first few laps of this red mark tire.
So where's Brandon Traino? Is he going to be even close to being alongside with Connor Harrington? Harrington into turn one already. Brandon Traino, as suspected, about 4 seconds back. That mistake in pit road has really cost him dearly. Here's a look at what happened, and you can just see he comes right and then completely just doesn't realize that about now he's blown past his box. Oh, there you go. It's about to come there. Oh, no, he's gone too far.
Yeah, it's almost like that he's so used to being in the first pit box after the pace car that he was just going there automatically and just blew right on through his pit stall, because I just think he's not used to being in the third place stall. But you can see that it's not quite as big a gap as maybe we were expecting. It's down to only about 2 seconds here. And with those red mark tires already fired up, Brandon Traino is continuing to eat into the gap to Connor Harrington here.
And now we'll see, out of drafting range, is he going to be able to catch up and then pull himself forward? Lastochkin has gone off the road very briefly. Sean Ryan will take advantage. Of course, these cars have all now made a pit stop. I didn't actually catch that before. Sean Ryan pitted about 10 laps ago from the Excuse me, no, I'm misreading my timing screen. He's just come out of pit road.
But interestingly enough, for Lastochkin and Trask, were they not on red tires before as well, Arjuna? So they have not done the compound swap, if I'm not mistaken.
I think I think they have. I think they all have. Lastochkin, Trask were the ones that were on the red mark tires. They've swapped to the blacks. It's just we had this during the HyperX Grand Prix of Long Beach for the Lionheart IndyCar series. Sometimes the car show is having a different tire than what they're actually on.
Gotcha. It's just my screen that's wrong.
No, don't worry. It was very confusing for us calling that race. It was Adriano Pinheiro who were like, wait, he hasn't fulfilled the compound requirement. Turns out he had. Two battles going on, and Glenix and Martin side by side with the two of them as they run into turn one. Behind them, Clint Martin again having some technical issues as our camera decides to jump all over the place. And Glenix gets on through. Ryan holds the outside line and just about gets on through there. Remember, Lastochkin and Trask, so the blue and white, the black and white machines that we're seeing at the tail end of this train, they're both showing us having the red mark tire on the car itself, but when it comes to what they're actually got on the machines, it is the primary compound. That is what iRacing is telling us. Fastest lap for Connor Harrington, 1:12.311, half a second faster than Brandon Traino last time by.
And he just pipped his teammate who had just set the fastest lap of the race. So the two private label team hype drivers are trading fast laps right now. And this is really the prime opportunity for them to do that when these red mark tires are their freshest. But it'll be interesting to see. Again, I want to follow how those tires fall off for the two private label team hype drivers, because again, I really do suspect that they're on much lower downforce, and that will eat into those tires quicker than most of the other competitors.
Riding from the nose of Kevin Burrell, who's rolled off of pit lane just now, the longest to go on the primary tires, comes out behind Alexander Russell, who's 2 laps into his stint. Burrell should be able to hold on to the rubber just a little bit longer than the machine in front of him will be able to do. Let's have a look at something that's happened. I mentioned that Listochkin was off the road. Bit of a jump there. Shouldn't have done too much damage to the car, but it was really that mistake on the brakes that really cost him big.
And that's something that can happen when you have these compound swaps. You're so used to hitting the brakes with the other compound, and you expect one type of performance, and especially switching from the red tires that Listochkin was on over onto these black tires in these first few laps. It's really difficult to get them fired up, and they just don't have especially the braking performance that you're used to. So very easy mistake to make for Listochkin, but it's unfortunately cost him a couple of positions here.
Looks like Porcelli has been passed by Piazza. Again, Porcelli switching over to the blacks. Piazza onto the other compounded tires, so maybe we see Piazza fall into the clutches potentially of Porcelli a little bit later on through this run. Kevin Burrell, I think, has made a small mistake. He's lost a bit of ground to the car in front. It split up very slightly after the cycle of pit stops, including for that frenetic battle that we had for 13th on back, which now sees Roblin Glenix at the front, 2.4 clear of Clint Martin, a further 0.6 clear or so of Sean Ryan. Davis Trask and Nikita Listochkin on the slower compound of tire will grip them up slightly more at the later portions of this race, falling backwards in the running order. Let's have a look at those track conditions. It's come down in terms of track temperature, something that will help those that switched onto the alternate red mark tire for the second portion of the stint.
And that's one of the cool things about iRacing in particular, is that they do have this wonderful weather system that does change fairly drastically over the course of a race, particularly when you have conditions here. As you see, it's later on in the afternoon, about 4:22 p.m. in sim right now, so it does really recreate that temperature drop that you see at the end of a long day, as we see a really nice battle on track here between, I believe that's Piazza and Porcelli right now.
I think Burrell and Russell, the second of the third, excuse me, of the. Yeah, there's many VRS satellite racing machines, and we would who were we talking about? I was doing Apex Hunters United. Friday evening for me was a Saturday in Australia. It's a league run by Shane Van Gisbergen and by Nick Foster, who are 2 real-world drivers. Of course, everyone knows Shane Van Gisbergen, who is on a roll, 8 wins in 12 races in the V8 Supercars for 2022. But I was commentating on the league, and they have their own set of cars. I think they have about 5 or 6 GT3 machines, and it was literally a sea of green. You could not differentiate any of the cars. It was awful, and we ripped into the guys just a little bit because we were having some fun on the commentary. But it's similar with the VRS satellite racing machines. It's why I do like the private label team hype, the Team i5G. Yes, the design is the same, but the colors are different for every single one of their drivers. It makes it way easier to figure out who is who when you're watching a fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially when you just have to make a quick identification, having identical cars does not make it easier. I'm also looking at you, Formula One. At least they have normally some
the T-bar.
Like T-bars and stuff that give the different things. I don't think even the VRS cars have anything that differentiates their cars. So if you can help us out just a little bit, if you're listening, VRS Satellite Racing, we would definitely appreciate it.
The reality is commentators are dumb. We need all the help that we can get. So do keep that in mind. The more you help us, the easier will be, the more nice things that we'll say about you. I have to say plenty of nice things about the Apex Racing team. I've been promised a shirt if I sing their praises. I think the one thing that potentially they've got... Yeah, okay, well, you can't really see it from this camera angle. This will be a slightly better view. That's not something that's easily identifiable, though.
No, certainly not looking at any camera position except for this one.
Yeah, it's basically useless, is the way we'll say it.
Certainly from an identification perspective, although that is a nice touch from a painting perspective. I will give them that.
I do like it. I enjoy the individualization. Every time I used to do special events, I go and put all of our names on the cars, and it's a small touch, and most people won't realize, but we realize. I see a question in the chat, push to pass. Well, these drivers get 10 usages of a push to pass. It's 60 to 70 horsepower spurts that will push them forward. It lasts for a maximum of 20 seconds, or when you get on the brakes, when you get off the throttle more specifically, and it's a tool that you can use to set up passes, especially down the very long run out of the exit of the infield, I guess the best way to put it, and all the way down into turn number 1. It's also, I say this way too frequently, so much that Justin Prince has started to make a bit of fun of me about this. It's push to defend as well. You use it when you're trying to hold off someone behind you, or maybe try and ensure there's a sufficient gap so they're not in your drafting range.
Yeah, it's definitely an important strategic element, and of course we don't have quite the same system as the real world cars. This is the system that they used to use at one point in time, but it's gone by the wayside long ago, and they have gone to a timed system now in IndyCar, but that is not the case on iRacing. We still have the old system with a limited number of pushes.
I do well, again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier with the setups for VCO Infinity. It is what it is. Everyone's got to deal with it. You've got to then strategize with what you've got, right? I mean, I think everyone would say they'd love the new system, but if we don't have it, you got to work with what you got.
Yeah, absolutely. Like for me, the only reason that I would prefer the IndyCar system is because it produces a wider variety of strategies and strategic uses of it. So you can have little short bursts in short straightaways. Instead of burning up a whole push, you just burn up a limited number of seconds, so you can really use it in different ways. So that's really the only difference, but you're absolutely right. It's as long as it's the same for everyone, strategy is strategy, and you just have to figure out how to use it best.
So, Andrew, are you running in the Fixed 500 this weekend with 10 laps to go? We'll start talking more about what's up on the horizon for us.
I'm undecided on that. So because of my wedding, I have had almost no practice in the IndyCar around Indianapolis, and I've contributed very little to power slide setup building. So I'm not sure if I'm even going to be able to race in the real world, or the
real
open
world.
Indy
Wow.
500. Sorry, not the real world. The open Indy 500. So I might just have to go for the Fixed 500, because basically I don't have enough experience in the car at this point to have a hope at the open one.
I mean, you might as well try, see where it gets you. I was talking to a Team Fordzilla driver today who, tried the IndyCar as part of VCO Infinity. Was like, hey, what does it take to be fast at Indianapolis? I think I might try the Fixed 500 qualifying. And I said, practice, not burning up your tires, knowing what the in-car tools are actually going to do. It's so deceptively tricky, and it's one where the Fixed 500 is a grind to get the perfect drive with the setup that you've got. The Open 500 and that qualifying week is more about making sure that you've got a setup that can take you to where you need to be to get the time that you need. If you want to join some of the fun as well, we're running some things as part of the openwheels.com. We're going to have a fantasy challenge on the Open 500. You have until this time next week, basically, to let us know what your predictions for pole position are going to be. The time, not the driver, although maybe that would be an interesting, different little game. If you want to have fun this week with the Fixed 500, we're challenging you to do a 4-lap run that is as close to 42.069. The winner will get some iRacing credits. You don't have to have that as your final result. You can set that time early in the week and then do a proper run if you want to try and qualify for top split. However, you must produce the session result as your verification that you actually did it. We're not trusting you. It's pretty easy to go and adjust some results in a screenshot if you really wanted to. So watching this Porcelli, we talked about the tires falling off. Piazza feeling the pressure now. The black mark tires really starting to get a move on.
Yeah, absolutely. This is really where that strategy from some of these drivers is going to come in handy. Another one I'm keeping my eye on is whether John Beaudefort can start making some progress. He hasn't really so far, but I think in these last 7 or 8 laps, this is going to be the time where he starts to make his drive forward as well. But really good battle here. It looks like we might just have a move here from David Porcelli. I think he'll be able to get it done, but man, that drive from Piazza, it's really strong here.
Good move from Piazza to try and close the door.
Oh, no.
And I think that might be on Porcelli, not getting on the curb, pushing wide with a bit of understeer. And unfortunately, it's Piazza that pays the price. He's bundled down to 9th position, lost out to Kevin Birrell as well. Now, Phil Kraus has got boxed up behind some lap traffic. I think that's Nikita Lostochkin, who he's stuck up behind. Connor Harrington closing to just 3 seconds, but he's burned through the push-to-passes at a rate of knots. Harrington down to just 2 left for the rest of this race.
Yeah, I think Harrington's thinking that banking the push-to-passes won't do him much good if he can't get within contact of Kraus to use them. But Kraus is burning through them a little bit as well. He had to use one to get around Lostochkin there, but it's definitely, I think, going to come down to these two teammates, and the question is, will Harrington be able to bridge the gap? I don't know that he will, because Kraus is just such a strong driver. He really doesn't make very many mistakes out here, and I think it's going to take a mistake for Harrington to really get close to Kraus.
Let's get a grab a look at what happened then between Piazza and Porcelli. So Porcelli really sends it deep, and maybe he's on the curb, and maybe that pushes him wide. Oh, we need some better looks from maybe up above if we can do that. Now that again doesn't give us the best angle. Maybe this one will give us a better view. So can see how far behind Porcelli was into the braking zone, but his tires are just gripping up a little bit more. Okay, maybe I have to retract what I said. He pushes wide, but not as much as I thought he did.
Yeah, I'm seeing this angle. It looks more of a 50-50 deal. I think that Porcelli probably could have stayed a little bit tighter to that left curb there, but at the same time, Piazza does kind of come down on him just a little bit, just as Porcelli sort of makes that small mistake. So it's sort of one of those, to me, just a racing deal that happens, and unfortunately Piazza came off way worse than Porcelli there.
See, it's half a car's width, but that's all you need to push wide when you're fighting side by side through that specific corner. It's half a car's width will very much change the trajectory that outside car's got to take. And there was trust placed by Porcelli that unfortunately was not well, I don't want to say misplaced, but unfortunately just didn't work out. Sean Ryan, Davis Trask, Clinton Martin, 3 cars fighting for 14th spot, and not far away from being lapped by Phil Kraus, which means that there's an opportunity for maybe Clinton Martin to take advantage as Kraus works his way forward.
Yeah, this has been the battle that we've always sort of come back to, because I think these setups sort of in this 12th through 15th sort of positioning here, they've really been sort of using up the tires at a rapid rate. So we've seen a lot of differences in terms of speed and in terms of fall off, and it's really created some fascinating action as we see Trask taking the run at Sean Ryan here, and I think he is going to be able to get by him into turn 1.
Can see the pink machine behind, that's Phil Kraus. Around the outside, can Davis Trask make it work? Can he be a bit cleaner than Porcelli? Yes, nice and tidy. And there you go. Again, that's half the car's width. That's all it was, but Trask hugs that inside curb and worked his way forward. Now again, it shows him as being on the red tires, at least on your screen, but confirmation, he's on the black mark primary tire. Behind him, the 2 cars, both on the red mark alternates, maybe starting to feel the pain. 5 laps to go as Phil Kraus closes his way on some more lap traffic. It's been a dominant performance from that private label Team Hype machine. Let's check in with Brandon Traino, who, again, it's that pit stop mistake, which he'll be ruining.
Absolutely. It's definitely cost him a shot at Connor Harrington at the very least, if not Phil Kraus. Traino has been closing in on Kraus. We saw him come out of the pits about 10 seconds back. He's closed up to within 8 seconds, but he just doesn't have enough time left, and those 4 seconds that he lost in the pits, it's just cost him everything.
I was talking about this with Lewis McLeod. We've seen it in the past where Phil Dinez, during a BMW Sim GT Cup race for BS Plus competition, actually recognized that he was going to go not as deep as Traino was going to go, but a little bit too deep that he would have not got service. And so while he was still on the brakes, before he had stopped, he had already put it in reverse. So basically he could slow the car down by getting it was a heads-up display, and it's why Dinez is one of the very best, especially in a GT3 car that iRacing has to offer. But everyone makes mistakes. It's as simple as that. It's a bit uncharacteristic from Traino. You mentioned that maybe he expected to be at the front of the queue, which is very much, I think, a fair assessment. He's been on pole, I think, the last 3 weeks in a row. But also, I point out that as Beaudefort closes on Rashad Craig and Adam Crane, I would point out that, you know, it's still easier to get onto the anchors in this configuration with more downforce than it's going to be when we strip all the aero off for the iRacing Indianapolis 500.
And we've seen that in the Indy 500, both in the real world and in the sim, it is not easy to get on this pit in because you're pushing so hard. But speaking of people who are pushing hard, John Beaudefort, he's really starting to maximize the use of those black primary tires that he is on right now, and he's putting all kinds of pressure on the back of Rashad Craig.
Now it's only a further second up the road to Adam Crane. All of these drivers now have 2 push-to-passes left as both Crane and Beaudefort are on the button. Craig actually gives the inside line to Beaudefort. I'm a bit surprised to see that, to be completely honest, but sailing on by is the Alpine Star Geodesic Racing Machine. Next target, the Canadian Adam Crane up the road in front of him. 3 laps to go. He's got plenty of time to make this happen.
Yeah, and that was the ideal scenario there for Beaudefort because he was able to use the draft of Adam Crane after he got around Rashad Craig, and that allowed him to really maximize that push-to-pass time that he had there. So really good stroke of luck there for Beaudefort, and I'm not sure that if I were Craig that I would have been that charitable with Beaudefort if it were me behind the wheel, but fair play from Rashad Craig there.
It was pretty courteous, I'll put it that way. I was a bit shocked, but I guess it wasn't worth fighting too hard. Maybe the idea was to try and keep behind Beaudefort on the run into turn 1, and as the Geodesic Racing Machine worked forward towards Adam Crane, maybe Craig could have taken advantage, but he's fallen back 1.4 away from Beaudefort, who's now within 7/10 of Crane, who gets on the button, coming to 2 to go for these drivers. Your race leader already across the line. You mentioned this earlier, that you thought some drivers were getting onto the button a bit too early. Beaudefort a bit more patient. Crane a lot earlier on the button. Look at the snake forming as they duck back and forth. Crane trying to break the toe.
Yeah, you have to be careful as the lead driver because sometimes you can even cost yourself more time because the driver behind you is reacting to where you're going. So if you're changing too much, you're actually scrubbing more speed than the driver behind you. And I think that's a little bit what happened with Craig there because Beaudefort really deep on the brakes into turn 1, and he's all over the back of that satellite racing car.
So you can see on the screen, there's that number. It's been moved a little bit because the steering wheel is going all over the place. 1 push to pass left for both of these drivers, coming to 1 to go. If the pass is going to happen, Beaudefort is looking to try and set it up, coming to the white flag. Phil Krause is already powering himself back onto the banking. 1 to go. He's been a dominant race for the private label Team Hype driver. This is where the fun is. This is where the action is. 2nd and 3rd, Harrington Traino using their final push to passes of the race. Harrington still has 1, but he's really just trying to have some fun and see what lap times he can do with these older worn tires. Again, Beaudefort more patient. Crane on it very early, and look at the line that he took even on the access road, working through the wrong way into turn 1 here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Beaudefort very patient. He's saving that push to pass for this final lap. He's not got many more opportunities left to make this happen.
Definitely an interesting strategy there from Beaudefort because he's going to have to burn that push to pass as soon as he gets out of that final corner there. But the interesting thing is that he forced Adam Crane to use his push to pass. So Adam Crane is now out. Beaudefort still has 1 left. That could be the advantage that he needs because I think if I'm Beaudefort, it might actually work out really well because it would have been a toss-up between the 2, but look at just how close these 2 are running right now.
Do you use it here, though? I don't even know if the run to the start-finish line is going to be enough. I think Crane might have actually done this quite well. Beaudefort, well, he's running out of time, he's running out of opportunities, but at the front of the field, running away, Phil Krause leading from the start to the end. The pit cycle did see him drop back very briefly, but it's a private label, Team Hype 1 and 2. Phil Krause returns to a Monday night. He's victorious at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Harrington 2nd, Traino 3rd. All eyes focused, though, on this battle for 4th position. Can Beaudefort go the long way around with that extra horsepower? Crane is fighting for all he's worth, but John Beaudefort, a photo finish to the line. The Alpine Stars Geodesic Racing driver steals 4th away from the Canadian. Just under 1/10 of a second split the 2 of them.
And it was just like I said, he was able to get the power down out of that last corner. Really nice driving from Bodefort. But what a drive from your number 4 car here today, Phil Kraus. Absolutely spectacular. Not a foot wrong this entire drive. He basically led start to finish after he overhauled his teammate on lap 1. Just a great drive all around.
Looking up above, it was also close between Kevin Birrell and David Porcelli, just about a 1/10.5 between the two of them, as Birrell with the late charge on the red Mark tires. So an interesting little battle there, but what a run to the line. What a race this was. Of course, it's the older, worse configuration of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It can still put on a show, that is for sure. Another drag race to the line, Davis Trask beating out Robin Glennox. A fun race, and one, of course, that builds us up to our virtual month of May. It's the iRacing Fixed 500 this weekend. Join us on RaceSpotTV for all the action. Let's run you down, though, through your race results. Phil Kraus, 4 odd seconds clear in the private label Team Hype 1 and 2. Connor Harrington sits in 2nd. Brandon Traino in 3rd with not much practice. Won't be disappointed with that, that's for sure. John Bodefort pips Adam Crane at the line to work his way up into 4th. Rashad Craig with a solid drive into 6th, with Porcelli then down in 7th. Kevin Birrell, Danilo Piazza and Alexander Russell through the top 10. While down in 11th, it's Richard Holt, Makoto Yamasaki 12th, Davis Trask, Robin Glennox, the final car on the leading lap. Sean Ryan and Clint Martin 15th and 16th, while Nikita Lostochkin finishes down in 17th. 2 cars with issues, Pablo Rangel and David Grable complete the 19 cars that took to the starting line. Fastest lap did go to Connor Harrington earlier in the race. Well, let's grab a look at our schedule before we wind things up here at the Brickyard. It's 3 races left. We go to Las Vegas next, of course. Well, when you think of IndyCar there, you think of tragedy, but it's going to be a fascinating race to see how the cars deal with the 1.5-mile oval and how the aero package really does work out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely one of those venues that gives IndyCar fans pause, but at the same time, with this new car, with this new aero configuration, it's definitely one of the more challenging tracks that I think they'll go to. It'll be fast, it'll be furious, but at the same time, it won't be the pack racing that brought tragedy in the real world. So I think that we should be in for a good race, and I'm looking forward to what this track will bring to us in 1 week's time.
Same time, same place, Monday night, live on RaceSpotTV. Join us at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific on May 16th for all the action from the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. The chips will be thrown in the air. Where will they fall? For now, though, that is all we've got time for here on RaceSpotTV. It's the month of May. It's time to focus on the Brickyard. This weekend, join us on Saturday at 5 p.m. UTC for the iRacing Fixed 500. All building, of course, to a week from then, the 13th running of the iRacing Indianapolis 500. Brandon Traino looks to continue setting history here. The King of the Bricks looking to go back to back to back to back. Can anyone stop him? You'll have to find out here on RaceSpotTV. For now, though, we bid you farewell. More IndyCar action to come later on tonight. The Lionheart Speedway Series heads to Kentucky for the HyperX Kentucky 200. Join Justin Prince, join Andrew Kinsella for what should be a fun race in the Dallara DW12. We'll see you, though, this weekend for the iRacing Fixed 500. A fun afternoon at the Grand Prix configuration, but we're here at the Brickyard. We're here to drink the milk. So long, we'll see you next time on RaceSpotTV.